Everybody listen to We're Not Wizards, because we are the best, and we're not wizards, no matter what anybody says. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for Julyosaurus. Do you think he saw us? Maybe he did see us. Maybe he didn't see us. Maybe he didn't see the massive amount of success which is suddenly happening in and around this ridiculously huge dinosaur park which you're controlling, but you're not only controlling it, you are developing it. You know, you don't know if you're taking it to a safe haven, maybe you're even taking it to a ninth haven. We don't even know, because joining me, he's not only excited, he's pretty keen. It's Richard Keene, Ninth Haven Games. He's here to talk about the expansion of Dinogenics. It's called Controlled Chaos, and it's his second printing. And he's in a pretty good place, aren't you, Richard?
I'm in a pretty good place.
End the podcast, that's it.
Sounds good. We're done here.
We don't need to say anything else. Thanks for coming back on. It's been...
glad to be here.
It's been a while, but I mean, let's face it, you have had probably... I'm not sure if things could have gone any better for you since we originally spoke for Dinogenics. I mean, it came along, it got fulfilled, it's been hitting tables. People have had, you know, a really decent amount of things to say about it. You know, people have really kind of been enjoying it. We've played it. We talked about it on the Kickstarter. We got the rules wrong. I'm sure you're hating me for that, but you know, it's just one of these things. But if we talk about Dinogenics first of all, the way it ended up, you know, after the first kind of campaign, obviously you kind of cancelled that and then you got back up again and you ended up hitting over kind of 200.
The first campaign wasn't that high.
It wasn't that high.
It was 144,000.
Oh, it was only 144,000. Yeah, I was looking at kind of
only 144,000.
Only 144,000. Kind of mixing up my numbers here because this is what I was looking on the first day of the new campaign. You kind of matched that funding, didn't you? You kind of got funded and then some. You know, within the first couple of days, you'd already beaten the kind of the total funding that you kind of hit for Dinogenics. But anyway, with that Dinogenics, has it been like a kind of a bit of a dream these last kind of 12 months since kind of Dinogenics has been out there and, you know, it all funded and it's all been produced and ready? I mean, has there been kind of little challenges along the way to get the original kind of first printing of Dinogenics to the table for people?
Oh, definitely. The first campaign ultimately went very well. Very happy with that. But it was the first project that I had undertaken as far as board game production, and there were a few ups and downs along the way. Probably the biggest thing that we ran into actually came right near the end of it during fulfillment, when we were a little late. Not much. We were about 2 months later than we had originally estimated. But as a result of that, the shipping rates of everything actually increased. And so we ended up in one of those situations. It's not entirely uncommon for Kickstarters to be in this situation where the amount we actually charged people was not quite enough to fulfill the Kickstarter. So this is... I've seen this in many different Kickstarters. I've seen how not to do it, which is you go to your backers and you're basically begging them for more money, which, thankfully, even though it was successful, we didn't make a ton of money from the first run, but we made enough money that we could cover the cost of the shipping discrepancy without too much of a problem. But that wasn't something that we really wanted to run into that close to the finish line.
Yeah.
So when that happened, it was kind of a low point. Thankfully, though, despite that, we didn't really run into too many problems fulfillment after that. Europe itself, this may have affected you a little bit, was a little bit later than we had anticipated as well. We were expecting most packages to go out early in the month, and an awful lot of them did go out towards the end of the month, but a delay of a couple weeks, I would say, is not too bad.
I don't kind of have an issue with that, or getting out the kind of the pitchforks. I knew it was coming. But at the end of the day, you guys, in terms of how you kind of handled the continued communication, it was it you and was it Chris that kind of did they work alongside you with the first project? But I remember the communication was always kind of really, really good, and you're always on the ball. And I think I only ever have an issue, speaking for myself, with fulfillment, if people go really, really quiet and aren't saying anything at all. So for you to say, oh, it was a couple of weeks, kind of, I know there would maybe be people who'd be like, oh, that's disgraceful, but they'd be few and far between, because your communication was always kind of, it was very decent, and it was always, we always kind of felt informed. So when it was going to be a couple of weeks late, it was like, yeah, well, I got other games to play. It's not like I'm sitting here with a clean kind of shelf of games that I haven't played in my collection, kind of thing. It'll kind of keep. When it got out to the kind of the first backers and they were kind of playing it, were you kind of hovering over every single bit of feedback you could see to see what the actual backers kind of thought of it then?
Oh yeah. To be honest, I was terrified. Like those first couple weeks of backer impressions. This is just something that goes along with anything that's in a creative field. Mm-hmm. You see both the positives and the negatives, but it's always the negatives that stay with you. And thankfully, there weren't that many of them, but anytime one would come up, it would be like I would be drawn to that impressions thread or something like that. And it's like, it doesn't matter how many positive threads or feedback you're getting, it's always the negatives that hang over you.
Yeah.
But I would say that overall, like, initial reception was very good, and after that first couple weeks, that kind of starts to blur together, and you kind of see the big picture as opposed to the individuals, and it's kind of nice to get to that point.
Yeah, let's talk about the other dinosaur in the room, Dinosaur Island, which kind of came up at the time of the campaign, and I've got both games, and they both play kind of completely, they do play kind of completely differently, in terms of how they kind of play kind of all together. What I found with your game was it seemed to be, and I mentioned this on the podcast, there seemed to be an awful lot more cohesion to it, as in everything kind of gelled together in terms of you dealing with the central island. Everything kind of moved within. It seemed to be a lot kind of more kind of connected to me. I mean, did you see kind of feedback direct with people still making kind of comparisons between the two games, or once it had landed, had people kind of forgotten about the Dinosaur Island kind of thing altogether?
Oh no, like even today, people are still discussing the similarities between the two games. And when I say similarities, it usually is largely skin deep.
Yeah.
People say the theme, they see that, but aside from the fact that you're running a dinosaur park in both of them, they are very different types of experiences.
Yeah. But I mean, all in all, I mean, the people that I've heard who have been playing it, they've been very positive and kind of, they have been positive in kind of like the feedback that they've given. So, was it based on the feedback that you had when it was positive? Is that what made you decide to come back for the second printing as well as just the kind of the expansion?
I think anytime you return the Kickstarter, doing only the expansion would have been a mistake because, it does work as a promotional piece as well. It's going to attract new attention, and anybody that did miss out on it the first time around, they're going to want an option to jump in on it.
Yeah, okay. And did you, as part of the kind of the campaign, you've got the choice of going for like Control Chaos, but you've also got the kind of the upgrade pack as well?
Yes, so the upgrade pack is something that when I was talking about the game and the second printing on Board Game Geek, I'm a large part of the community. Well, not a large part of the community. I participate in the community frequently. And just in general conversation there, I would bring up some small changes that are carried over to the new edition of the game. And one thing that would always come up is people requested an option to get these changes.
Yeah.
Now, on the whole, there isn't that much that's new in the second printing of the game. I don't want to get caught calling it a second edition, because it's really not.
Yeah.
It is just a second printing. But the biggest difference is in the rulebook, which is something that we did receive a bit of criticism after the first Kickstarter. So we hired somebody to completely rewrite our rulebook. It reads better. It also looks a lot better than the first edition did. And that's really the biggest difference, but there is a couple small balance changes to a couple cards, so we threw those in there as well for the upgrade pack. If you don't have them, it's not going to break the game.
Yeah.
But they're little edge case scenarios where two of the manipulation cards were either a little bit underpowered or a little bit overpowered, depending on when you got them in the game. That's pretty much the extent of it.
Okay. Is the feedback for the upgrade kit, has it been kind of quite positive then? That people went, yeah, I definitely kind of need this, rather than kind of pushing people to, if they wanted to kind of get these fixes, they had to buy essentially the second kind of printing of the game?
It's a little mixed, to be honest. There's a little bit more negativity in it than I was really expecting, because the whole point of offering the upgrade kit was to give people an out to get these components that, you don't want to rebuy a whole game just to get a couple fixes. So it was really, I wanted to include that, but some people do feel that we should have thrown them in the expansion box as well. Of course, the reason we didn't do that, well, there's a couple of reasons. One, there is a certain degree of cost associated with doing that.
Yeah.
But the main component of the upgrade kit is the new manual, which physically doesn't fit in the Controlled Chaos box. So, yeah, it's...
You end up cutting up in half or something like that.
Then they would need to get a third edition that had, like, glue that you could put it back together.
That's not a bad business model if you can get, like, $25. You could keep doing that for, ages. Let's face it, that's kind of Apple's business model. Kind of here, have something that doesn't, eventually it doesn't kind of work, and then you have to go for the next version. So there's maybe potentially something in there. I don't know if the wrath of the Kickstarter crowd...
I feel like that would make me unpopular very fast.
I think. I think that would be potentially like you just contacting people and saying, go and just give us more money so we can ship you out something which we didn't kind of work out what the costs were for anyway. In terms of the effect on you on your day-to-day life, I mean, has it had... Obviously, there's the positive sides of things where you got the game funded and then some. But with this campaign, has the success of this current campaign, has that kind of taken you, did that take you by surprise, or were you quietly confident when it kind of seriously kind of smashed the funding goal almost immediately when it was launched?
So it has taken me by surprise. Modesty aside, I was expecting it to do better than the first campaign, but then we basically doubled my expectations of what it was going to do. So it was not only better than what I was expecting, it was twice as good as I was expecting over the entire length of the campaign. So at this point, I'm just kind of in awe of what has happened.
Does this change your plans at all for what you're going to do next? I mean, do you get the opportunity then to sit down and say, right, okay, is this a chance for us to do something more with the company? You know, are you now looking at saying, well, could we go into games design in a more kind of part-time kind of basis? Because I'm not entirely ignorant to the fact that I know that even on the biggest Kickstarter kind of success rates, you know, especially around about kind of your area, once you're reaching kind of $200,000 to $300,000, that doesn't mean you've all of a sudden got, you know, $300,000 in your bank account. It means you've got $300,000 minus the 10% that Kickstarter or whatever take. Then you've got everything else to take into consideration. So even on something, you know, if you're doing like $300,000, you're lucky if you kind of make any money at all off the back of that, you know, based on kind of like what happens during the kind of the manufacturing process. But at the same time, are you having kind of quiet conversations with yourself about the direction that maybe Ninth Haven could go in then?
Sure, absolutely. The big thing is the first Kickstarter was successful, but as you said, Kickstarter and other fees, manufacturing costs, do take the majority of the funding. And after the first campaign, I'll be upfront, it wasn't enough to necessarily make a career out of it at that point.
Yeah.
It was very much a side job that just happened to take as much time as a regular job, but it was a side job. With the success of this Kickstarter, though, it's still not to the point where, you know, it's smooth sailing ahead.
Yeah.
But I will say it's a lot closer. And while there are a couple other games that are in the works for Ninth Haven Games, the success of this Kickstarter does mean that focusing on them is going to be a much more realistic prospect.
Do you want it to be full-time? I mean,
if I could do it full-time,
yeah.
I absolutely would.
Yeah, because I know of some people who kind of like the ability to be able to dip in and dip out. Kind of get
Sure.
to the point where it's kind of like it does become a career thing, but then it's a case of, well, in order for this to be, I've got to be successful all the time, at least, you know, once or twice a year I've got to be running kind of a campaign after a campaign. But, I mean, with Dinogenics, did that get into distribution as well? I mean, were you able to get that into kind of retail things too?
Oh, not at all. The truth of the matter is Dinogenics is one of the most expensive games on the market, despite the fact that it has no miniatures.
Wow.
I have been contacted by numerous publishers at this point that are super excited to want to make their own copies of the game. They want to carry it in their markets. And then I send the manufacturing quote, and they very respectfully shut the door.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it's... When the first Kickstarter was coming out, I really wanted it to be as, polished as it possibly could be.
Yeah.
And I really threw everything we had into making it that way. And as a result, it has many deluxe components, and they're not cheap.
No, I mean, let's face it. The most of the boards on there are they're double. They're double kind of depth on there. You've got pretty much everything. The board's a size and a half. I mean, even everything from like the card quality to, you've gone through the thing of making individual dinosaur meeples that actually look like the dinosaurs that they represent instead of kind of very, very generic looking ones. So that, you've got that when you see it on the table, you can tell what the dinosaurs that the different people kind of have when they're playing, and it just added that extra thing to the theme. And again, I'm kind of, more than aware that the more you kind of have a diverse set of components on the table, how much more that's gonna cost. Is there a chance it's gonna go to retail, or is it gonna be? Are you looking at alternatives to lower the cost components, or are you just saying no? I need to maintain the level of quality that I have.
So at this time, it's going to be largely Kickstarter. There have been a couple talks with a couple different publishers that were interested in doing like a non-deluxe version of the game, but at this time, nothing is really moving on that front, just because of how much the game would have to be reduced.
Yeah.
I won't say that it'll never happen, but it will not happen probably before the Kickstarter delivers. I'll say that much.
Right, okay, that's not a no then, Richard. I'm not, but that's not a yes either. It's a very ambiguous answer, by the way.
It's very ambiguous.
I don't even know that. I don't even know if I like that answer, to be perfectly honest. But
I will say this. I am open to the possibility of there being a cheaper version on the market, but based on the way things are right now, it is not in the near future.
Yeah. There's a lot of things. There's continual rising costs you've got to take into consideration. There's the potential of these fantastic kind of tariffs kind of that were going to come in as well, that were going to cause a lot of headaches for a lot of people as well. So you've got to take that into consideration. For those who... it's a heavy box as well. Retail-wise, what would you be looking at in terms of a price if somebody was buying it at retail? Was it $100? Was it $120? Was it $79?
So, every time I speak with a publisher, they always give me roughly the same number,
right,
which is, if we were to sell the game at the cost that it's manufactured at, it would be about $120 at retail.
Wow. That's a Gloomhaven.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the kind of the quality of the kind of the components. But anyway, that's not beside the point. Have you run out of stretch goals yet?
We're not out of stretch goals yet, but we did hit a lot of the big ones that we had planned, like during that very first 3 days. Which, at this point, we have a couple goals that we thought that were too ambitious for the project.
Yeah.
We looked into them with our manufacturer, had them spec'd out, and when we saw the price quote, it was basically, okay, that's great, that's not happening.
We're just gonna
shut
the door on it.
Now that funding has gotten to the point where it is, those ridiculous, over-the-top stretch goals do start to become a reality. So, there's still a little bit of content on the horizon for sure.
Were you conscious of kind of keeping stuff at the back to use as kind of stretch goals? Or because you kind of strike me as the type of person that you've given us Dinogenics and you've kind of not held back on that. You don't strike me as the type of person who would say, right, here's a really excellent part of the game that I'm potentially going to gate behind a stretch goal, and then it's going to be basically crap if people don't play it with this particular kind of addition kind of thing. Would you prefer people to have everything that you kind of have envisioned for the game then?
Very much so. That's actually something that I try to hold like a core belief of the game. Not a core belief, but core aspect of the game is I generally don't like stretch goals that add content, because there's basically one of two prospects for this. Either it was something that was cut out of the game, which isn't fair to backers, or it's something you haven't tested, which means throwing it into the game isn't necessarily a positive. Yeah. Now, with Controlled Chaos, there is a little bit of an exception here, because I don't know if you followed the most recent stretch goal, but it does actually add new dinosaurs to the game. Yeah. These were a separate subset that was actually in testing for quite a long time. However, the cost associated with them was so high, and they were they weren't a core dinosaur. They're basically like a little additional dinosaur that you can pick up to add a little bit more diversity and uniqueness to your park. So basically, when we were speccing out the cost of the game, we looked at the cost of these particular dinosaurs, and the cost ratio just wasn't there for what the component offered at the time. These were not, as I said, a core dinosaur of the game, so that was something that was ultimately cut out of the game, and it went back into balancing after that, just to make sure that taking these elements out of the game didn't break anything. That's very important when you do remove something. But now that we have this opportunity to add them back in, I think it does make for a much more thematic and flavorful experience for the game.
Has it been easier kind of getting media coverage? Kind of rocking up to people and saying, hey, do you want to have a chat about our game? Because I noticed that you've got your 90 second there, but you've got Mr. Vassal doing a little video on Dinogenics. So
we do. We have real reviews this time.
I wasn't just you kind of like different disguises, kind of standing in front of a video screen going, buy the game, it's great. You've actually got, I mean, was it kind of easy to get Tom to kind of cover it at the time, or, was it a lot of kind of like, well, we'll send the game off, we'll put in a nice little note, and we'll wait and see if he's interested in kind of covering it at all?
So, this was actually kind of funny. The Dice Tower crew received the copy of Dinogenics during a live feed they were doing. So I should know the name of their segment, but it's basically Tom does an unboxing video during a live segment. And it just happened to be that we had sent a copy of the game in the only box large enough to ship it to them, which happened to be a Home Depot box. I don't know if you have a Home Depot where you are, but it's basically a warehouse tools store. Yeah. So this has nothing to do with games, but the box was big enough, so that's what we shipped it in. And they opened this during a live showing that they were doing, opened it on the middle of the table, took the game out, and they had no idea what the game was, but they cracked open the box, and the general assessment is, this looks pretty cool. Yeah. So after that, it seemed like an eternity, because they said they were going to review it, but it was 2 or 3 weeks after that fact before a video actually went up.
Whoa.
So this just put all kinds of doubts into my mind about what they were eventually going to say about it.
It's just,
But
just Tom Vassell just walking away from a dumpster fire going, it's in there. It's in there. As he's fanning the flames with his hat.
yes. But no, the review was very positive, which made me ecstatic. And yeah, that's the history of the review.
But I mean, has this made it easier for you to kind of develop, kind of get some noise going for Controlled Chaos then? Or,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The big thing, basically, the first time it was on Kickstarter, it was difficult to get anybody to take a look at the game. Like, we had some paid previews for the first Kickstarter, which I hate doing paid previews, but it was the only way to get video coverage of the game at that point.
Yeah.
And during the Kickstarter, I made it very clear that they were paid previews. Like, obviously, you don't hide that stuff. But when that was the only avenue of getting coverage, it is frustrating because, as a first-time developer, you're limited in your resources as far as getting people to talk to you or even getting people to take a second glance at what you're producing. But this time around, like, people have received the game. It's been all over social media. One benefit of having a horribly overproduced game is that it photographs very well in social media, so people see photos of the dino meeples on the boards, and they want to know what that is.
I'd like to point out, right, me saying it was horribly overproduced, right? Yeah, that was in a private chat where you asked for some direct feedback, and I don't appreciate you bringing this out into the public, alright? I really like the game. I can delete that episode now where I say I like the game, okay? So, if you don't mind, thanks kind of very, very, very much. And I mean, joking aside though, I mean this could hit some even kind of bigger figures. Are you looking to do something different now? Are you looking at moving away from the Dinogenics? Do you feel now that maybe the next step is to say, right, okay, yeah, Ninth Haven, we don't want to be known as the Dinogenics people. We want to be known as, a kind of a board game design company. And are you now looking at the next thing that you're going to kind of bring to people's tables already?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, there are a couple different games in the works. Mm-hmm. One will definitely be hitting the public viewscape sooner than the others, but it really is to the point where, with Controlled Chaos, I feel like Dinogenics is more or less complete.
Yeah.
I can't say that I'll never go back to it if I have some great idea to add a expansion that increases some element of it. But for now, I do consider it a complete product with Controlled Chaos. So for the future, the plan is to branch out to some other areas, for sure.
Are you going to do like a bigger game than Gloomhaven then, seeing as you're heading for the $120 kind of price point? Anyway,
hopefully the next game will not be in the $120 price.
It's going to be like a little like card game or something like that. You're going to do like, and now it's going to be produced in conjunction with Button Shy, Ninth Haven Games, 18 card game, all about, I don't know, rolling barrels down a hill. There you go, kind of thing. But are you kind of thinking, I mean, is there kind of like, are we looking at something kind of completely different for the next game? Hear me fishing for clues?
The next game is very different.
You don't have to tell me, it's fine. I'm just a nosy Scottish guy. Don't worry about it. I mean, if it's different then that's fine. We can wait. you're building up tension now. It's like doing the third series of a popular show, maybe like Stranger Things. Is it a Stranger Things type game, Richard?
It is not a Stranger Things type game.
That's fine then, because it's a rubbish show anyway. But no, I mean, but for yourself, I mean, has this helped with your designer confidence kind of going forward? You know, because you took a big risk with Dinogenics.
I think going forward, I have a much better idea of how to structure a game that will appeal to people without throwing in the added bling. But I do like thematic games. I do see that being a cornerstone of games that Ninth Haven Games produces. Mm-hmm. So I don't really like the idea of cutting corners to save cost. If something does make the game better and more fun to play, I would absolutely, go in that direction.
No, I mean, I think when it's opening the box, and this is like, when we put it on the table in front of people that haven't played it, it becomes a very, very tactile experience, if you know what I mean.
Yep,
it's
absolutely.
Not, people end up picking up the player boards because they're the double thickness, the indents on them. I'll get the terminology for what that board is at some point. You're just not telling me, so you can laugh at me behind my back later on. But anyway, when they were kind of going through picking up everything from the worker meeples to the dinosaurs, people were actually picking up the components and going, they were actually kind of looking at the quality, checking them out, kind of comparing them and kind of contrasting them, which I thought was like really quite kind of cool. And I see the balance, people try to balance kind of cost versus the kind of the quality or how thematic that you want to get. So I'm intrigued to see the direction that you go next and whether you're going for something as thematic or if there's a part of you that says, well, hold on, do we hold off and maybe look at how we can get some Ninth Haven games into kind of distribution at the same time? Yeah.
Sure. For the next game, for sure, it's going to be a thematic experience. Mm-hmm. It's not thematic in quite the same way.
Right.
Part of, doing Dinogenics is everybody knows Jurassic Park.
Yes.
And you can capture that very easily. For the next game, the theme is not quite as prominent in people's minds, but I do find that theme actually goes hand in hand with most of the games I enjoy, and for that reason, I of course am going to make it a large part of the game going forward.
Have you been playing anything kind of recently that's kind of you've been enjoying?
So it's funny talking about thematic games and things like that. One of the most recent games that I got to the table was Nemesis, which you might be familiar with.
Yes. Yes.
A very thematic game. Maybe as similar to the Aliens franchise as Dinogenics is to Jurassic Park.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, yeah. You know what I mean? Let's face it, you don't want Steven Spielberg rocking up at Gen Con and asking to play Dinogenics because he might have a couple of questions, but there you go. But yeah, I've heard Nemesis is high tension and backstabby and can be quite, it's a lot of fun, but it can also be a lot of why the hell did you kill me, you mad alien infested nightmare that you are, kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, the last time we were playing, I got the secret objective that was basically land the ship in Mars and kill everyone.
Wow.
Which did not go over... Well, I wouldn't say it didn't go over well, but people were annoyed that I kept messing with the nav computer. But, it happened. As it turns out, I was the only one not to win that game because I could not complete my objectives, but... Even when you fail in that game, it's a fun experience. So I think that's kind of the testament of a really good game is if you can lose horribly and
Yes.
still have fun doing it, then it's a good game.
Yeah. I mean, I've kind of been indulging a bit in kind of Wildlands, which is a very, very simplistic kind of skirmish game, and it's kind of, it does okay in the theme type of thing. The production values are very, very high, and it's kind of like a pretty much fun game to play. I took delivery of another game which looks absolutely stunning, and I can't really mention until it gets past a certain date, which is kind of frustrating, but there you go, kind of thing, which we'll be talking about at another time. The most important question though, Richard, is, okay, are you going to be digging out the dinosaur costume if you get fully stretch gold? Because I know you got one, because you've sent me photos before of you in the dinosaur costume.
I'll tell you what.
Well, okay.
If we hit $1 million, I will do that.
Well,
that's my promise.
Well, will you not only put the costume on, will you dance to 30 seconds of Walk the Dinosaur?
If we hit $1 million on Kickstarter, I will do this for you.
So I have that. That's taped evidence. That's going into the evidence file.
Yep.
EC 102. If people want to check out the campaign, we'll give them a link in the show notes to the campaign. But if people want to keep an eye on what Ninth Haven are going to be doing in the future and keep an eye on your good self, where do you exist on the internet webs?
On the internet webs, you can find me on Twitter at Ninth Haven Games.
Okay.
You can also find us on Facebook. Currently, we only use the Dinogenics page for pretty much everything,
Cool.
as it's our only game, but that is simply facebook.com/Dinogenics.
Cool. Excellent.
And one more place, you can also go to ninthhaven.com to find our website.
And we'll make sure we shall put all of these links in the show notes so that we've got notes to show, plus links where you can also buy a dinosaur costume if you want to get involved in the fantastic choreographed number which Mr. Richard Keene is going to be putting on when Control Chaos smashes through the $1 million mark. You heard it here, folks. I'm just saying, get pledging. If you've got one copy, get another couple. I want to see this boy dance. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, you can go to the internet webs, search for We're Not Wizards. I'll tell you what, if you reach $1 million, I'll wear a wizard costume, right? And I'll dance alongside you. All right, there you go.
Maybe we can fly somewhere together.
There you go.
We can film this. It'll be great.
That'll be absolutely fantastic. I'll make sure I have a long beard. If you go to the internet, search for We're Not Wizards, you'll find us on all different types of places. Worn Out Faces, bright and early for the daily races, on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. And we've got our blog, which is we'renotwizards.blogspot.com, and our website, which is we'renotwizards.com. And you can find us on the various podcast catchers which have got the word pod or the word cast in them, and the ones that don't, like Spotify and Stitcher and Spreaker, and there's people keep telling me more of them, so this joke's wearing thin. If you like us very much, you can do a couple of things. Tell other people about us, because that's the only way that our virus spreads throughout the world, and we must be stopped. And the second thing you can do is you can go into Apple Podcasts and you can drop us a rating or a review. So if you drop us a rating or a review, don't give us 10 stars because it makes us big-headed, but don't give us 1 star because it makes us cry. Give us something like a 5 because it's in the middle and it's average, and we're just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average tonight is rather wonderful, rather fantastic, Mr. Richard Keene. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
there's only 2 more things to do. First thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Richard?
Would it be bad if I said I was a wizard?
Well, if you hit 1 million, I'll be one as well, so it'll be fine. And there you go. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Richard. Say goodbye, Richard.
Goodbye.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s, make something awful, and check out this Kickstarter, because I like Dinogenics, and I got a feeling you will too. But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.